All right, next we've got Senator Ebbin. And I think we've got maybe three bills that cover the same subject matter. We've got Senate Bill 3, which deals with the marriage provisions of the code, Senate Bill 603, which does that and replaces gender terms throughout the code, which is the broader version of Senate Bill 3. And then we have Senator Edwards' bill,
SB 50.
SB 50, which is identical to your SB 3. Is that right?
That's right.
So we're going to take up Senate Bill 3 and 50, and I don't know what y'all's preference is for how we deal with these. And then we'll take up 603. So we'll take up the narrow first and the broad second. So if 3 and 50 report, then we can move on. If they don't, then 603 probably won't either. Kristen, they identical? Yeah. Okay. Well, let's take that up at the end. Let's let Senator Ebbin make his presentation. Anything Senator Edwards wants to add would be fine. All right.
Okay. Senate Bill 3 brings Virginia Code into alignment with Obergefell versus Hodges, which is the Supreme Court decision that repeals the now defunct bans on same-sex marriage and civil unions. And this was, as Senator Edwards said, the unanimous recommendation of the Code Commission. And obviously the ban is no longer valid throughout the U.S. And the Code of Virginia, I believe, and I think the Code Commission certainly believes, needs to accurately reflect the law, removing any legal ambiguity. That's the bill. We repealed our anti-miscegenation law in 1968, just 1 year after Loving versus Virginia. We're now approaching 4 years after the other decision, and I would just ask that you concur with the Code Commission.
All right. Senator Edwards, go right ahead. Can you turn? John, I can't hear you.
The Code Commission did unanimously support Senate Bill 50 on the grounds that the current law is obsolete based on the Supreme Court's decision. And it was a unanimous decision by the Code, and it's identical to Senator Ebbin's bill.
And I might add further, this was also sent to the Attorney General's office at the suggestion of Delegate Habib, the Vice Chair of the Code Commission.
He's not Vice Chair, but
okay.
the Attorney General has an opinion saying that it's obsolete. And the Code Commission deals with obsolete bills on a routine basis.
Okay. Anybody have any questions of the patron? Anybody in the audience wish to address this bill?
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. James Parrish for the Quality Virginia. We appreciate Senators Edward and Ebbin for introducing this bill. We agree with them and the Code Commission that we need to have a clean code in Virginia. Marriage between same-sex partners is legal in the state and all 50 states, and our code should reflect that. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Claire Guthrie Gaston-Yaga, on behalf of the ACLU of Virginia, we'd like to associate our comments with Mr. Parrish and the Code Commission, and we strongly urge you to pass this bill.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak in favor? Right, in opposition.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Josh Hetzler on behalf of the Family Foundation. The bill before you would have you repeal natural marriage as between a man and a woman from the Code of Virginia. In doing so, you would discard 400 years of this recognized institution in the Commonwealth. Removing the definition of marriage in Virginia would not only be hasty and reactionary, it would be wrong. It is said, it has been said that the U.S. Supreme Court has spoken on the issue of marriage, and indeed it has. Less than 3 years ago, the court voted 5-4 to redefine the institution as old as time itself, cloaking it with the veil of constitutional legitimacy. Yet, as the Chief Justice aptly pointed out in that case, the Constitution had nothing to do with it. He knew then what we know, that we still know today, that it was a decree of the will and not a restatement of law. As state legislators, you may choose to bow to the gross federal and judicial overreach of the court's opinion on marriage, then so be it. But we understand the predicament it poses for you. Nevertheless, one thing remains certain. A vote to repeal Virginia's marriage statutes will change absolutely nothing. Its only practical effect at this point would be a symbolic one. It would represent this legislative body's official imprimatur on the idea that marriage really is something other than a man and a woman, that marriage can also be a man and a man, a woman and a woman, or whatever other combinations the court decides to create next. So not only is a vote to repeal marriage in Virginia totally unnecessary as a practical matter, but it would be a bold statement by every legislator who votes for its repeal that he or she stands in contravention to the millions of Virginians who continue to recognize marriage as between a man and a woman, and who voted decisively in 2006 to memorialize this definition in Virginia's Constitution. And while the General Assembly of Virginia cannot control what 5 members of the United States Supreme Court declare by judicial decree, the members of this body unquestionably do control what it asserts through the statutes of this Commonwealth. So then it is no longer a matter of what the Supreme Court has done or what it thinks about the institution of marriage. This is about what you will do in your representative capacities with regards to the laws on marriage in our state laws. And for still millions of Virginians, this is a clear line in the sand that ought not be crossed, and they are watching. In conclusion, we urge you to reject what amounts to a purely symbolic action and to retain the truth about marriage in the laws of this Commonwealth. The truth that marriage, by its very nature, is and always will be between a man and a woman. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McDougal.
Before you leave, can you answer a question for me? I didn't get your name.
Josh Hetzer with the Family Foundation.
Your thought is, if I listen to your argument, you think that because the people have spoken, we should not do this because the people voted on a constitutional amendment. Is that accurate?
My point, Mr. Chairman, Senator McDougal, is that there are many Virginians whose view reflects the one that is currently written into Virginia's law, and that it ought to remain that way, notwithstanding what the Supreme Court has decided and what this body may acquiesce to as a matter of policy, but as a matter of laws on the books, we think it ought to reflect the truth about marriage as between a man and a woman.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McDougal.
So based on that, you think that if it should reflect the views of Virginians, then that's an advocacy for us putting a constitutional amendment back on the ballot for Virginians to make that determination?
That's a question that you could take up next year, certainly. But it's
So you would be in favor of that, letting Virginians decide?
We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
We might help you with the planks.
All right.
We just
Time
stand
is
with
up.
that. I know, we just stand with the comments that were made, Virginia Assembly Independent Baptist.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you. Bill Ray with the Virginia Catholic Conference. We also oppose this bill.
All right. Thank you. All right. Anybody have any questions of the patron? All right. The bill is before us.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a brief statement. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been in a very happy marriage for over 51 years. I doubt anybody else up here has been so fortunate yet. And it has been loving and caring and deep relationship. And I don't see why anyone would deprive anyone else of that joy and that relationship. I really hope everyone will vote for this.
All right. Bill is before us.
Mr. Chairman?
I'm sorry, Senator Ebbin.
Very, very briefly. I think that when we talk about what the people of Virginia think, I think that the train has left the station, and polling is different if it was on the ballot. But further, we've had same-gender marriage, and the sky has not fallen. And there is a difference also between marriage and holy matrimony. This bill in no way encourages or not encourages, in no way prohibits any church from limiting marriage as they've done before. So what we're really talking about is legal marriage with people getting the responsibilities and privileges from the state as they have now.
All right. There's motion to report.
Substitute motion.
Well, there's no second yet. I'm sure there will be.
Move to report.
Okay. All right. Senator McDougal.
Substitute motion is to give the opportunity for the constitutional amendment to come forward next year that we carried over for the year.
All right. The motion.
I'll move the previous question.
Well, hang on. Hold on. Time out. Just a second. The motion that was made was, the primary motion was to roll these two bills together, I assume, and to report them together as Senate Bill 50, or excuse me, as Senate Bill 3, with Senate Bill 50 rolled in and Senator Edwards named as a chief co-patron. That motion, that was your motion?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I thought that's what I heard. And the substitute motion was to carry the bill over for the year. The pending question was moved. My understanding is we vote on the pending question.
The previous question.
No, the pending question was moved.
I moved the pending question, and there is no debate on it.
That
There
is,
no substitute.
that is what is.
I moved the previous question before that.
That is what is before us, is that pending question, which is to carry the bill over for the year with, as Senator McDougal said, with the idea that next year the voters may be given an opportunity to act. So the pending question is to carry the bill over. Clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 8, no 7.
All right.
Okay. I assume you don't want me to present the second bill?
No, I mean.
Okay. I have a statement real briefly.
I mean, certainly we're going to take it up. I mean, we take up every bill.
Okay.
And so your second bill is Senate Bill 603, which is the broader bill.
It is, and this bill deals with a lot of other obsolete provisions, but
Right.
it's, the Code Commission, or the subcommittees of the Code Commission held that these were uncontroversial as they go. And I did want to point out that there's some back and forth. This committee voted to send the other bill and this 603 to the Code Commission before, and the Code Commission had a broad discussion about what its responsibilities were about obsolete laws, and even sent it to the Attorney General. And both members of this committee, they're on the Code Commission, did vote differently on the other bill. Now, this bill repeals specific prohibitions to marriage that are no longer valid, and there were lots of subcommittees that included groups like the Equality Virginia, the Family Foundation, the Catholic Conference, et cetera. Now, these ones are ones that no one voiced an objection to in a larger, long chain of emails that went around for some time. And the Code Commission had this for a few years. But most of the experts, I should say, in the committees were people like the Bar Association, Attorney General's Office. I can read the names of the attorneys, Health Plans Association, that sort of thing, realtors. And basically, right now, same-gender couples are allowed to adopt, make medical decisions, inherit property. And these were ones that, again, that there was no objection to. They deal with taxation, property rights, marital rights, divorce, birth records, birth certificates, and other fields. This is what's already happening in Virginia. And again, Loving versus Virginia was changed in less than a year. And I believe that attorneys, judges, court clerks, accountants, realtors, law students, and the public all deserve to be able to consult the code for an accurate representation of Virginia law. Even me, a legislator who's not a lawyer, deserves to be able to look at the code and understand it easily. There are about 18 code sections affected here in this 35-page bill of the 80 that were originally brought up. They include things like property rights, marital rights, divorce, birth records, birth certificates, marriage records, having an insurable interest in the spouse, inheritance rights, workers' compensation rights, spousal immunity, duty to support, requirement that the spouse join wage assessment or lien, rights of surviving spouse, and right to hold property with right to survivorship. They merely change words to words like spouse, spouses, spousal, married individuals, privileges of marriage, parents, other parent, either parent or decedent. And while I know it's not why we make decisions here, there was a front page article of USA Today last week that talked about Amazon relocating their second headquarters, and it talked about the effort by some to have Amazon locate in a state that's not moving backwards. And it takes a while to do a constitutional amendment, which might be an argument against this one as well. But this is really, I thought, simple. And I'll just tell you where there was an agreement. There was an agreement on things like assisted conception, adoption, some punting on a few other pieces, home birthing, surrogacy. That part was not changed by this bill. This is basically taking that 88-page bill that you've referred to the Code Commission, the broader concept, and agreeing with the Code Commission, with the subcommittees of the Code Commission on the uncontroversial portions. This does not eliminate, or I should say, it just changes the words in the Code Commission largely. Now, it does take out the ban as well, which you could all leave in if that's your will. I don't know why. But to get this on the ballot, I don't know if you're all going to vote to put this on the ballot next year. I can't, predict that. But if that's the reason for not going forward with this bill as any other, then I've got to assume that you want it on the ballot where polls show that sort of thing will pass. But even if it's on the ballot, that does not change the words in the code. It just changes the Constitution. This would merely bring us closer to alignment with the law of the land and show that Virginia has some forward thinking or gets caught up a bit, much as we did in Loving versus Virginia in less than 12 months. This would be less than 5 years.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Senator Edwards.
as chair of the Code Commission, we do have in the Code Commission a subcommittee looking into this very issue, which is a lot more complicated than most people realize. But what this bill does is take out the uncontroverted issues and put it, as I understand it, changes, for example, things like instead of husband and wife, the words would be spouses, or instead of that type of thing. Very uncontroversial changes in wording to conform to a gender-neutral code. That's basically what it does, and that's my understanding. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions, the patron? Anybody in the audience wish to speak in favor of or in opposition? Step right up.
Chairman, members of the committee, James Parrish, Quality, Virginia, and we support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Claire Guthrie Gastineaga, on behalf of the ACLU of Virginia, we also support this bill.
All right, thank you. Anybody else in favor? All right, step right up.
Mr. Chairman, Josh Hetzler with the Family Foundation. Just say many of the terms and changes in Senator Ebbin's bill here are rather innocuous in and of themselves. But then again, we do have a rule of statutory construction that's actually in the code that addresses gender terms that basically it says that if it's one way, it should be assumed and read to be also, if it's male, it also means female.
All right.
And so this is a rather unnecessary item as I referenced earlier. And we ultimately believe that male and female do matter. Words matter. And there is no reason to change the code in this way.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Bill Ray with the Virginia Catholic Conference. We also oppose this for the reasons stated here. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Really briefly, I would point out that the Family Foundation was on the Banking, Wills, Trusts, and Estates Real Property Subcommittee. The Family Foundation and Catholic Conference were on the Domestic Relations Subcommittee. The Family Foundation was on the Criminal Law Subcommittee. Family Foundation Catholic Conference were on the Health Insurance Healthcare Subcommittee. The subcommittees were open to all, although they were mostly represented or almost exclusively by attorneys. They were also on the Housing and Employment Housing Committee Subcommittee, Employment Subcommittee. This is just fixing some words in the code to represent the current state of law. I would also point out, although I guess it was just on the last bill, everyone on the Code Commission, whether it was Delegate Habib, Senator McDougall, former Delegate Lemunion, sitting judges, and others voted for the last bill. I can't speak to this bill because it was subcommittees, but there was a long chain of emails, and the original bill would have been this thick. I've taken the favor for you of skimming it down, trimming it down to 35 pages that I've highlighted here if anyone would like to look at it.
Okay. All right. Bill is before us.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the bill be reported.
Substitute motion, Mr. Chairman, I move it be carried over for the year
All right.
and move the pending question.
All right. Substitute motion is to carry the bill over for the year. The pending question is that clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 8, no 7.
Thank you.
Thank you.